So this is the non-diagramming version of subsidies first, and then I'll post the version of where I'm diagramming. So subsidies, I'll keep it short because it's meant to be just a review. Subsidies, so they refer to money that the government is providing for businesses. Now, this helps lower costs and it helps increase production. And as I say, it's kind of one that makes everyone happy, right? The consumers are paying a lower price, the producers are getting more money, they're getting more quantity sold, and so forth. Of course, there is some controversy to it, which we'll come back to at the end. So why would governments subsidize? One could be to lower price of essential goods, healthcare, education, things what government think people could really use, and they want to help people be able to afford those goods, subsidize. Another could be to encourage growth of certain industries. So we've seen this quite heavily when it comes to electronic vehicles. Another example, solar energy, right? Things where often industries that are very nascent or very new, the overall, the overhead costs in the initial phases can be expensive, right? The infrastructure is not there. That's where government comes in. Third is to guarantee supply. So keep in mind things like agriculture. That's why farms, for example, in the United States receive so much money. Those are necessary, right? The U.S. government, and really any other government, does not want to rely on other countries for things like food. Another example would be flights. The reason why flight companies get like $500 billion from the U.S. government every year is because the U.S. government would prefer paying extra money and have Delta, United, American, fly instead of bringing in other countries' airlines like, I don't know, say Turkish or like Qatar or Etihad. They rather have American Airlines have guaranteed supply. To protect employment is another one. So for example, we've seen this with like coal companies, like mining companies in smaller cities. Even though that type of energy is becoming more and more obsolete, the government will come in and make sure that those people have jobs to a certain degree, because you don't want little cities where like you suddenly get 60% unemployment, 70% unemployment, because that's going to lead to other problems like crime and like domestic violence, etc., alcoholism. So another reason could be to protect employment of people in certain industries. And finally, to enable producers to compete with overseas trade. So we see this quite a bit with the automobile industry in the United States, where companies like Ford, Chrysler, they're getting money to compete with overseas companies like Toyota, Nissan, Kia, etc., because you want your home industries to do well, right? You want your country's businesses to do well so you can export products and not have a trade deficit. So what it looks like on the graph, and again, we'll go into this a bit more detail later, is you go vertically down or basically it's to the right, but technically it's vertically downward, and that distance between S1 and S2, or S1 plus subsidy, this is representing the subsidy that the government is providing. And this moves the equilibrium. Now we have from here, where we had a higher price and a lower quantity, to now consumers are happy because they're paying less money and buying more of the product, while producers don't get this money. They go up, 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 all the way up here, where they're getting more. As you can see, we started over here, right, at the equilibrium. They're getting more of the quantity and at a higher price. So everyone is happy. Well, almost, because keep in mind that even though the producers have increased revenue and consumers are paying less and consuming more, this money here, this subsidy, is not truly free, right? There's no such thing as a free lunch. It's coming from somewhere. It's coming from taxes. It's coming from property tax, income tax, sales tax, for certain countries, VATs. It's coming from the people. And it connects to another more controversial idea that, keep in mind, the government is picking and choosing winners here, right? Why are they subsidizing Tesla a certain amount and Ford a certain amount? right? Or why should they be even subsidizing Tesla at all? Why are they subsidizing this energy company but not that energy company? Right? These decisions are very controversial because it's money that the government has collected from the people and are making decisions on how to spend that. So that's what makes subsidies controversial, right? This money is not really free money. Someone's paying for it, and it's usually the taxpayer. And on that note, that's, I think, my last point. So there's sort of the very fast version of basic conceptual things regarding subsidies. Now, when it comes to graphing and understanding things like deadweight loss, that will come up right now. I'll connect the two videos together. But yeah, this is especially for those who are struggling. We'll start by reviewing subsidies. So we'll have our little supply curve there, our little demand curve. They're a little, as you can see, they're both a little bit elastic. And yeah, let's start with the conceptual. So why would a government want to subsidize an industry? It's because they believe that industry, for whatever reason, is worth subsidizing it. Like if it's vaccines, they think people's health is worth it. If it's electronic vehicles, they think protecting the environment is worth it, and so forth. So when they subsidize, they're helping the producers, right? The producers have an easier time producing whatever they are. They're maybe getting help with capital or labor, or simply just getting money. So supply curve shifts to the right. So this has done something to the equilibrium, right? Originally, you can see price equilibrium, quantity equilibrium was at this point right here. Now we have a new equilibrium and a new price. The main thing being that this quantity, as you can see, has increased. Not only are we producing more, but we're also selling it at P1, a cheaper price. So the consumer and the producer's both happy, right? The consumer's paying less, all the while the producer, we'll call this P2, is receiving more money. And you might be wondering, well, how the heck could the producer be receiving money up here when the consumers are only paying down here? Well, the reason there is all this area, right? This area right, oops, wrong color. This area right here, that is the government subsidizing, right? That's a government spending money to help that specific industry. Now let's briefly touch upon DWL, dead weight loss. So this space right here, this represents welfare or dead weight loss. Now for those who might not remember, dead weight loss represents inefficiencies in the market. In this case, it is overproduction. It's the government producing items that otherwise the free market did not need. It's inefficient, right? Which is not a good thing. We don't want too much or too little of any product. So this is an example of dead weight loss. Now the last point I want to touch upon with subsidies is the change of the consumer and producer surplus. So prior, let's make that thicker, prior to this subsidy, all of this was, oh, sorry, I went too far. Prior to the subsidy, all of this upper part was the consumer surplus. All of this bottom of the equilibrium was CS and PS. So consumer surplus and producer surplus. Now, what has happened since the introduction of the subsidy is that both of these have increased. And that makes sense conceptually, right? Because both the consumer and the producer is more happy. As far as the consumer, keep in mind they used to pay at this price over here, right? The equilibrium. Now they're paying down here at a lower price, which means this area here and this area over here, that is all in yellow, part of the consumer surplus, right? The consumer surplus has, well, in this area too, this whole thing is consumer surplus. The consumers are happier. This 1, 2, 3, that's all new consumer surplus. Now the producer surplus also has expanded because the producers, right, they used to get the money also at this equilibrium point, but now the producers are getting money up here. So making more money means this area all up here, as well as the right to here, that is all part of the new producer surplus. The producer has increased their happiness as well. Now, one final note to take is that, yes, we do see very happy consumers and producers. So you might be wondering, why? Why would anyone not like subsidies? Well, the reason why people are against subsidies is this money, right, this whole chunk here, all of this is coming from the government, but it's not really from the government, right? If you remember earlier chapters, that's coming from taxes, income tax, sales tax, property tax. So the people are the ones actually subsidizing this. And even more controversial, as I stated at the beginning of the video, which industries are getting the money, right? Is it going to be soccer teams, which they do actually, right? Sports teams do get a lot of subsidies. Is it going to be the schools? Is it going to be automobile companies? And that's why subsidies can also be very controversial. So that's the first of the 4 review videos. There you have subsidies.